The first time I heard Ethan play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, I fell in love with his hands. That sounds strange, I know, but watch a pianist pour their soul into Chopin and tell me you don't understand. His fingers moved across the keys like they were speaking a language only the piano could understand, drawing out melodies that made my chest ache with feelings I didn't have names for. I was 23, working as a cocktail waitress at the Meridian Hotel in Manhattan, serving overpriced drinks to people who barely looked at me. The hotel had a grand piano in the lobby lounge, usually played by whoever they could get for cheap. Most nights it was background music, forgettable and pleasant. But that Tuesday in September, Ethan sat down at that piano and everything changed. He played for 2 hours straight, moving through Chopin, Debussy, Rachmaninoff, pieces that should have been background becoming foreground. Guests stopped talking. The lobby went quiet except for those notes, cascading and building and falling like water over stones. I stood behind the bar, a tray of drinks forgotten in my hands, and listened to him transform that sterile hotel lobby into something sacred. When he finished, when the last notes of the Rachmaninoff faded and the spell broke, I walked over to him. "That was beautiful," I said, which was inadequate but all I could manage. He looked up at me, and I saw eyes the color of strong coffee, tired but kind. "Thank you. I'm Ethan. Isabella. Do you play here often?" "Starting tonight, apparently. The regular pianist quit and I needed the work." He smiled, a little self-deprecating. "It's not Carnegie Hall, but it pays better than most gigs." We talked for 20 minutes, my manager shooting me annoyed looks that I ignored. Ethan told me he'd graduated from Juilliard 3 years earlier, had been trying to make it as a concert pianist, had been slowly accepting that classical music careers were nearly impossible to build. He played weddings and corporate events and hotel lobbies, took teaching gigs when he could find them, survived on whatever work he could get. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you do when you're not serving overpriced martinis?" "I paint," I said. "Or I used to, before art school debt and rent made that feel like a luxury I couldn't afford. Now I serve overpriced martinis and tell myself I'll paint again someday." We're quite the pair of failed artists, aren't we? "Not failed," I said. "Just not successful yet. There's a difference." He laughed, and the sound was warm and real, and I decided right then that I wanted to know this person better. Ethan played at the Meridian 3 nights a week. I worked 4 nights, so we overlapped regularly. I'd bring him coffee during my breaks, sit on the bench beside him while he practiced before his shift started. He'd play pieces he was learning, stop to explain what made certain passages difficult, share the stories behind the compositions. Chopin wrote this nocturne when he was in love, Ethan told me one evening, his fingers moving softly through the opening measures. You can hear it in the melody, that ache of longing mixed with joy. It's not just technically difficult, it's emotionally demanding. You have to feel it or it's just notes. Do you feel it? I asked. When I play it now, yes. He looked at me when he said it, and something passed between us that made my pulse quicken. We started having coffee after our shifts ended, both of us exhausted but not ready to go home to empty apartments. We'd sit in all-night diners, talking about art and music and the dreams we'd had that weren't working out the way we'd planned. He told me about growing up in a small town in Ohio, the son of a factory worker who didn't understand why anyone would choose music as a career. I told him about growing up in Brooklyn, the daughter of immigrants who'd sacrificed everything so I could go to art school, only to watch me struggle to make that sacrifice mean something. My father still asks when I'm going to get a real job, Ethan said. He thinks music is a hobby, not a career. I've tried to explain that it's everything to me, that I can't imagine doing anything else, but he doesn't get it. My parents don't understand either, I said. They wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, something practical. Art seemed frivolous to them, self-indulgent. Even now, when they visit and see how I'm living, I can see the disappointment. Maybe that's why this feels right, Ethan said. Being with someone who understands that art isn't frivolous, it's necessary. That creating something beautiful matters even if it doesn't pay well. He reached across the table and took my hand, and that simple touch felt like a promise. We fell into each other gradually, then all at once. Coffee after work became long walks through the city, walking until sunrise just to keep talking. Long walks became me going to his apartment, a tiny studio in Queens with a digital keyboard and walls covered in sheet music. His apartment became us in his bed, learning each other's bodies the way he learned compositions, with attention and patience and careful exploration. "You're beautiful," he whispered the first time we made love, his musician's hands gentle on my skin, finding places that made me gasp. "I want to write music about you, something that captures this feeling." "What feeling?" I asked, breathless. "That I've been looking for you my whole life and didn't even know it." I fell in love with him in moments like that, in the poetry of how he saw the world, in the intensity of how he felt everything. Ethan experienced life at a different frequency than most people, everything either transcendent or devastating, nothing ever simply fine. It was exhausting sometimes, but it was also intoxicating. He made me feel more alive, more present, more real than I'd ever felt before. 6 months into our relationship, I moved into his apartment. My roommate's situation had fallen apart and Ethan immediately offered to share his space, even though it was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. We made it work, arranged our lives around each other, learned to coexist in that tiny space. I set up an easel in one corner, started painting again for the first time in over a year. Ethan would play while I painted, his music filling the apartment, and I'd try to capture on canvas what his melodies made me feel. Blues and golds and deep purples, abstract expressions of emotion rather than concrete images. "These are stunning," Ethan said, looking at a canvas I'd just finished. "Isabella, these are really good. You should show them." "Show them where?" "No gallery wants work from an unknown artist who works as a waitress. Then we make them want it. We find a way." He believed in me with an intensity that was both inspiring and terrifying. No one had ever had that kind of faith in my work, not even my art school professors. But Ethan saw something in my paintings that made him certain I could succeed. He started researching galleries, finding open submission opportunities, helping me put together a portfolio. Between his teaching gigs and performing work, he'd spend hours helping me prepare applications, writing about my work in ways that made it sound significant and meaningful. "You're going to make it," he'd tell me. "I know you will. You're too talented not to." I wanted to believe him. More than that, I wanted to be worthy of his belief. A year into our relationship, Ethan got an opportunity that seemed like it could change everything. A small concert series in Brooklyn was looking for emerging pianists, offering a modest payment but, more importantly, exposure to classical music audiences and critics. He auditioned and was selected for a performance in 3 months. "This could be it," he said, excitement making his voice shake. "This could be the break I need. If I play well, if critics notice, if the right people hear me, maybe I can actually build the career I've always wanted." I watched him prepare for that concert with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He practiced 8, 10, 12 hours a day. He stopped taking as many teaching gigs, stopped playing weddings, focused entirely on perfecting the program he'd selected. Chopin, Rachmaninoff, and a contemporary piece by a living composer he admired. Money got tight. I picked up extra shifts at the hotel, covered our rent and expenses while Ethan practiced. I didn't mind. This was his moment, his chance, and I wanted to support him the way he'd supported me. But the constant practicing was hard to live with. The apartment was so small that I couldn't escape the sound, couldn't paint without hearing the same passages over and over as he worked through technical challenges. I started going to coffee shops to work, giving him space and giving myself silence. One afternoon, 2 weeks before the concert, I came home early from a cancelled shift. I was carrying groceries, planning to surprise Ethan by cooking a real meal instead of our usual cheap takeout. I heard voices before I opened the door. Ethan's voice and a woman's voice, both laughing. I almost didn't go in, almost turned around, some instinct warning me that I didn't want to see what was happening inside. But I opened the door anyway. Ethan was at the piano with a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, dark hair and elegant features, leaning over the piano keys while Ethan played. Their heads were close together, her hand on his shoulder, an intimacy in their positioning that made my stomach drop. They looked up when I came in, and I saw guilt flash across Ethan's face before he covered it with a smile. "Isabella, you're home early. This is Melissa. She's helping me prepare for the concert." Melissa smiled at me, friendly and warm and completely unthreatening. "Ethan's told me so much about you. He's so talented, I'm excited to help him get ready for this performance." "Melissa runs the concert series," Ethan explained. "She stopped by to discuss the program and I asked her to listen to what I've been working on." It sounded reasonable. It looked innocent. But something in my gut said otherwise, some instinct that told me there was more happening than what I was seeing. "I should go," Melissa said, gathering her things. "Ethan, we'll talk more tomorrow about the program notes." "Isabella, it was nice to meet you." She left, and I stood there with groceries in my arms, looking at Ethan and trying to understand what I'd just witnessed. "Who is she really?" I asked. "I told you, she runs the concert series. She's helping me prepare." It looked like more than that. "Isabella, don't be paranoid. She's a professional contact, nothing more. You're the one I love." He came over and kissed me, and I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that what I'd felt was just jealousy, just insecurity, just the fear of losing someone I loved. So I convinced myself he was telling the truth. But over the next 2 weeks, Melissa kept appearing. She'd text Ethan about the concert, they'd have long phone calls about program details, she'd stop by the apartment to discuss things that seemed like they could have been handled over email. And Ethan became distant. Not in obvious ways, not in ways I could point to and say definitively something was wrong. Just small things. He'd pull away when I tried to kiss him, say he was too focused on practicing to be affectionate. He'd take phone calls in the other room, lowering his voice when I walked by. He'd work late into the night then fall asleep immediately, too tired for intimacy. "It's just stress about the concert," he'd say when I tried to talk about it. "Once it's over, things will go back to normal." I tried to believe that. Tried to ignore the sick feeling in my stomach, the certainty growing in my chest that something was wrong. The concert was on a Friday in November. I sat in the audience, proud and nervous, watching Ethan walk onto the stage in a suit I'd helped him pick out. He looked confident, composed, ready. He played beautifully. Every note was precise, every phrase shaped with emotional depth, every technical challenge executed flawlessly. The Chopin was heartbreaking, the Rachmaninoff powerful, the contemporary piece surprising and innovative. When he finished, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Critics in attendance were nodding, making notes, clearly impressed. It was everything he'd worked for. His breakthrough moment, his chance to finally become the pianist he'd always dreamed of being. I stood in the back of the hall, tears streaming down my face, so proud I could barely breathe. This was the man I loved, finally getting recognition for his incredible talent. Finally being seen. After the concert, there was a reception. I watched Ethan talk to critics, to classical music lovers, to people who might help his career. He was glowing, energized, exactly where he was meant to be. Melissa was beside him through all of it, introducing him to important people, facilitating conversations, making sure he met everyone who mattered. She was good at her job, I had to admit. She knew how to navigate these situations in ways I didn't. I stood on the edges, not sure where I fit in this world of classical music and professional networking. I was just a waitress who painted sometimes, not someone who belonged in conversations about concert bookings and recording opportunities. Late in the reception, I saw Melissa touch Ethan's arm, saw them exchange a look that lasted just a moment too long, saw something pass between them that made my chest tighten. When the reception finally ended, when we got back to our apartment in the early hours of the morning, I confronted him. "Are you sleeping with her?" Ethan looked startled, then defensive. "What? No. Isabella, where is this coming from? The way you look at her. The way she touches you. The way you've been distant with me for weeks. I'm not stupid, Ethan. You're being paranoid and jealous. Melissa is helping my career. That's all. Then why do you pull away every time I try to touch you? Why do you take phone calls in the other room? Why has sex been practically non-existent for the past month? Because I've been stressed about the concert. Because I've been working constantly. You know how important this was. And now the concert's over. So things should go back to normal, right? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I need to focus on my career right now. There are opportunities coming from tonight, meetings scheduled, potential bookings. I can't be distracted. I'm a distraction. That's not what I meant. But it's what you said. We fought until sunrise, going in circles, me accusing and him denying, neither of us able to bridge the gap that had opened between us. Eventually we went to bed exhausted and woke up pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. Over the next 2 months, Ethan's career started taking off in ways he'd always dreamed about. He got bookings at better venues, started getting reviews in classical music publications, was invited to perform at a prestigious festival in the spring. And Melissa was part of all of it. She became his unofficial manager, helping him navigate opportunities, negotiating contracts, opening doors that had been closed before. I should have been happy for him. This was what we'd both wanted, Ethan's success, his breakthrough. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him in the process. That his success was creating distance between us that I didn't know how to cross. He moved out 3 months after the concert. Didn't break up with me officially, just said he needed space to focus on his career, that living together was too much distraction when he needed to practice constantly. I still love you, he said as he packed his things. But I need to do this for myself. For my career. Is Melissa involved in this decision? This has nothing to do with her. But I knew it did. I knew it in the way he said her name, in the way his phone lit up constantly with her messages, in the way he'd changed since that concert. He left, and I was alone in that tiny apartment surrounded by my paintings and the echo of his music. I found out about their relationship officially 2 weeks later. A friend sent me a link to Melissa's Instagram, photos from a concert after party showing her and Ethan close together, intimate in ways that couldn't be misread. The caption said something about celebrating success with brilliant artists. I called Ethan. He didn't deny it. It just happened, he said. We have so much in common, she understands the classical music world in ways you never could. It's not about you not being enough, it's about me needing someone who gets this part of my life. I supported you for 2 years. I worked extra shifts so you could practice. I believed in you when no one else did. And I'm grateful for that. But Isabella, be honest. You don't understand this world. You're a waitress who paints sometimes. Melissa is connected, sophisticated, she can help my career in ways you never could. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Not just that he'd cheated, but how easily he dismissed everything I'd been to him, reduced me to just a waitress while elevating Melissa for her connections and sophistication. So that's it? 2 years meant nothing? They meant something at the time. But people grow, situations change. I'm sorry, Isabella. I really am. He hung up, and I sat in that apartment we'd shared, surrounded by paintings I'd created while listening to him play, and felt something inside me break and then harden. I could have fallen apart. Could have spent months crying, could have let the betrayal destroy me. But I didn't. Instead, I got angry. Cold, focused, determined anger that crystallized into purpose. Ethan had used me. Had taken my support, my money, my belief, had let me sacrifice for his career, then discarded me the moment someone more useful came along. He'd reduced 2 years of love to nothing but a stepping stone on his path to success. I was going to make him regret that. I started by looking closely at Ethan's career success. The bookings, the reviews, the festival invitation. How much of it was genuine talent and how much was Melissa's connections? I researched her background, found out she came from serious family money, that her father was on the board of multiple classical music organizations. She'd started the Brooklyn concert series with family funding, had connections throughout the classical music world because of her family's wealth and influence. Ethan's sudden success wasn't just about his talent. It was about who he was sleeping with, whose family connections he could access. He'd traded me for her strategic value. That gave me an idea. I'd been painting seriously during our relationship, had created dozens of canvases while he practiced. They were good, better than I'd realized at the time. Ethan had told me repeatedly that I had real talent, that I could succeed if I just got the right exposure. What if he was right? What if I could make it, could become successful in the art world the same way he had in classical music? Not through connections I was sleeping with, but through actual talent and hard work? That would be the real revenge. Not destroying his success, but building my own. Showing him that the waitress he'd dismissed was actually the talented one, that I could succeed without using anyone, without betraying anyone, just through the quality of my work. I started by taking my portfolio seriously. I went through all my paintings, selected the best ones, photographed them professionally using equipment I rented with money from extra shifts. I researched galleries, learned about the art world, studied what successful emerging artists did to get noticed. I discovered an open call for a group exhibition at a gallery in Chelsea, a space that featured emerging contemporary artists. The submission fee was steep, $50 I could barely afford, but I paid it and submitted my work. 6 weeks later, I got an acceptance email. 3 of my paintings would be in the exhibition, opening in 2 months. It wasn't a solo show, wasn't instant success, but it was real. Professional gallery representation, my work being shown in Chelsea, a chance to be seen by actual art buyers and critics. I worked extra shifts to buy proper frames and pay for transportation. I spent every free moment preparing, researching how to price work, learning about artist statements and CV development. I approached it with the same intensity Ethan had brought to his career, except I was doing it alone, without someone supporting me, without someone else's connections opening doors. The opening was on a Tuesday in April. I'd invited a few friends, people from the hotel, no one from the art world or with any influence. I wasn't there for connections, I was there to show my work. The gallery was small but well regarded. About 50 people came to the opening, browsing work from 10 different artists. I stood nervously by my 3 paintings, abstract pieces in blues and purples and deep gold, hoping someone would look at them for more than a few seconds. A woman in her 50s stopped in front of my largest painting, studied it for a long time. She had that look of someone who really saw art, who understood what she was looking at. "These are remarkable," she said, turning to me. "Are you the artist?" "Yes." "Isabella Torres." "I'm Margaret Chin. I run a gallery in Soho. This work is exactly what I've been looking for, contemporary abstract with real emotional depth. Most emerging artists either go too conceptual or too derivative. You found something genuine here." We talked for 20 minutes. Margaret asked about my process, my influences, my plans for future work. She gave me her card and said she wanted to see more, that she might be interested in representing me. "Send me images of everything you've created in the past 2 years, she said. "If it's all at this level, we should talk about a solo show." I left that opening in a daze. A real gallerist was interested in my work, wanted to see more, had mentioned solo show representation. This was the break I'd been dreaming of, the validation that my work mattered. I sent Margaret a comprehensive portfolio 2 days later. She responded within a week asking to meet at her gallery. When I arrived, she had several of my images printed and displayed on her desk. "I want to offer you representation," she said. "Solo show in 6 months, here in the gallery. We'll do a proper launch, invite critics and collectors, give your work the presentation it deserves. I think you're going to be significant, Isabella. Your work has something rare." I signed with Margaret that day. We planned the solo show, discussed pricing and promotion, talked about the direction my career could take. She was professional and direct and believed in my work without needing me to be anything other than a good artist. I spent the next 6 months creating new work for the show, pushing myself technically and emotionally. Every painting was infused with everything I'd felt over the past year, the love and betrayal and anger and determination. The collection became a visual narrative of transformation, of breaking and rebuilding, of finding strength in pain. I titled the show, After the Music Stopped. It was my story without being obviously biographical, my emotional journey expressed in color and form and texture. The show opened in October, a year after Ethan's breakthrough concert. Margaret invited critics, collectors, gallery owners, people who mattered in the art world. She'd promoted the show well, had gotten it listed in art magazines and websites, had created real anticipation. The opening was packed. Over 100 people came, filling the gallery, responding to the work in ways that took my breath away. People stood in front of my paintings for long minutes, clearly moved. Critics took notes. Collectors asked about prices and availability. 3 paintings sold that first night. By the end of the week, 8 of the 12 works had sold. Prices ranged from $3,000 to $8,000, more money than I'd ever made from my art. But more important than sales were the reviews. The New York Times art critic wrote about the show, called my work a stunning debut from an artist with genuine vision and emotional depth. Other publications followed, all positive, all recognizing something significant in what I'd created. I was becoming known. Not famous, not yet, but known in the art world as an emerging artist to watch. Margaret was thrilled. This is exactly the launch we hoped for. You're on your way, Isabella. The next show should be bigger, higher prices, more ambitious work. You're going to have a real career. I thought about Ethan constantly during this time. Wondered if he'd heard about my success, if he'd seen the reviews, if he understood that the waitress he'd dismissed was actually talented in ways he'd never fully appreciated. I found out he had when he called me 3 months after my show. Isabella, I saw the Times review. Your show sounds amazing. I'm so proud of you. The sound of his voice made my chest tighten with remembered love and current anger. Don't call me unless you have something important to say, Ethan. I do. I wanted to apologize. For how I ended things, for what I said. You weren't just a waitress. You were important to me. Past tense? You know what I mean. I'm calling because I miss you. Because Melissa and I broke up and I've been thinking about what I lost when I left you. You broke up with Melissa? It wasn't working. She was too focused on my career, too interested in managing me. I realized I missed being with someone who loved me for myself, not for my professional potential. And you think I'll just take you back? After you cheated, after you left me, after you told me I was just a waitress who could never understand your world? I was an asshole. I was so focused on my career that I couldn't see what I had. But I see it now. I see you now. Can we talk? Maybe meet for coffee? Part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that he'd realized his mistake, that he genuinely regretted what he'd done, that we could somehow rebuild what we'd had. But a stronger part of me, the part that had been forged in the pain of his betrayal, said no. I've moved on, Ethan. I have a career now, real success that I built myself without using anyone. I don't need you anymore. I don't want you anymore. Isabella, please. I know I hurt you, but we had something real. Don't throw that away because I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You made a calculated choice to trade me for someone more useful to your career. That's not a mistake, that's who you are. And I'm not interested in being with someone who sees relationships as strategic opportunities. I hung up before he could respond, and I felt something release in my chest. The hold he'd had on me, the power he'd had to hurt me, was gone. I'd survived his betrayal and built something better than what we'd had together. But Ethan didn't give up. He started showing up at my gallery openings, at art events where he knew I'd be. He'd try to talk to me, to apologize, to convince me to give him another chance. It was flattering in a sick way, watching him pursue me the way he once had, but it was also annoying and uncomfortable. You need to stop, I told him after he showed up at my third opening. We're done. You made your choice. Live with it. I made the wrong choice. I see that now. Isabella, I love you. I never stopped loving you. You loved what I could do for you. My support, my belief, my willingness to sacrifice for your career. You didn't love me, you loved having someone who made your life easier. That's not true. Isn't it? You left the moment someone more useful came along. And now that Melissa's gone, now that your career has plateaued a bit, suddenly you remember I existed. I'm not your backup plan, Ethan. His career had plateaued. I'd been following his progress, and after the initial breakthrough, things had slowed down. He was getting gigs, was still working as a professional pianist, but the trajectory had leveled off. Without Melissa's family connections, without someone actively managing his career, he was just another talented pianist in a city full of talented pianists. Meanwhile, my career was accelerating. My second show sold out completely, with prices double what they'd been for the first show. I was being featured in art magazines, was getting commissions from serious collectors, was being discussed as one of the most promising emerging artists in contemporary abstraction. I'd become what Ethan had dismissed me as being incapable of becoming. And I'd done it honestly, through talent and work, without betraying anyone or using anyone's connections. That was the revenge I'd wanted. Not destroying him, but succeeding so completely that he had to watch me thrive while he stagnated, had to see that the woman he'd abandoned was actually the one with genuine staying power. 2 years after we broke up, I was invited to show at Art Basel Miami, one of the most prestigious art fairs in the world. It was validation that I'd arrived, that I was being taken seriously at the highest levels of the art world. Ethan was in Miami the same week, performing at a concert series there. We crossed paths at an event, both of us invited to the same gallery opening, both of us part of the same arts community now but in very different positions. Isabella, he said when he saw me. Your Art Basel booth looked amazing. You've really made it. Thank you. I heard your concert went well. It was fine. Nothing special. He paused. I think about us sometimes. About what we could have been if I hadn't screwed everything up. We couldn't have been anything. You wanted someone who could advance your career, and I wanted someone who loved me for myself. Those are incompatible wants. I did love you for yourself. No, you loved what I represented. The struggling artist narrative, the romance of poverty and passion and creating art together. But when real success became possible, when you had a choice between genuine love and strategic advantage, you chose strategy. That told me everything I needed to know. And now you're successful and I'm just another working musician. Is that what you wanted? To prove you were better than me? I didn't do this to compete with you, Ethan. I did this because I'm an artist, because I had to create, because my work mattered regardless of whether you recognized that. Your betrayal hurt, but it also freed me. I stopped trying to fit into your world and built my own instead. I'm happy for your success. I really am. But I wish we could have succeeded together. We could have. If you'd been loyal. If you'd valued what we had more than what Melissa could offer. But you didn't, and that choice has consequences. 3 years after our breakup, I had a major museum acquisition. A prestigious contemporary art museum bought one of my large-scale pieces for their permanent collection. It was the kind of achievement that changes a career, that validates an artist at the highest institutional level. The museum held a small reception for the acquisition, invited collectors and critics and other artists. Ethan came, uninvited, stood in front of my painting as the museum director gave a speech about its significance. Afterward, he approached me one last time. That speech was beautiful. About your work exploring transformation through pain, about finding strength in breaking. Is that piece about us? About what I did to you? It's about me, I said. About my journey. You're just the catalyst that started it. Do you hate me? No. I don't think about you enough to hate you. You were someone I loved who hurt me. I survived it. I'm grateful for what it taught me about myself. Which is that I'm stronger than I thought. That I don't need anyone to validate my worth. That I can build a life and a career on my own terms without using or betraying anyone. Those are valuable lessons, even if they came from pain. I'm sorry for all of it. I hope you know that. I know you think you are. But I don't think you truly understand what you did or why it mattered. You saw relationships as transactions, and some part of you still does. You're apologizing because you want something from me, not because you genuinely regret the harm you caused. I walked away from him then, and it felt like closing a door that had been slightly ajar for too long. He'd been a part of my story, an important part, but he wasn't part of my present or future. 5 years after our breakup, I had my first international solo show in London. Major career milestone, significant critical attention, the kind of exhibition that establishes an artist as internationally relevant. The opening was packed, the sales were strong, the reviews were glowing. I was 31 years old, had a thriving art career, was financially secure, was dating someone new who was kind and supportive and had no connection to the art world. I'd built exactly the life I wanted, on my own terms, through my own work. I thought about Ethan sometimes, about what we'd had and how it had ended. The betrayal still hurt in small ways, triggered by certain songs or passing his old apartment or seeing couples in love. But the pain was distant now, more memory than current wound. He'd tried to reduce me to just a waitress, had dismissed my talent and my worth when someone more useful came along. And in doing so, he'd taught me the most valuable lesson, that I didn't need anyone's belief to succeed, that my worth wasn't determined by who loved me or left me, that I could build something real through pure determination and refusal to be diminished. The art on museum walls was my revenge. The career I'd built was my answer to his dismissal. The life I was living was proof that he'd been wrong about me in every way that mattered. I didn't destroy him, didn't even try. His career had plateaued naturally, his talent not quite enough without the connections Melissa had provided, his work good but not exceptional, his trajectory that of a working musician rather than a star. My success wasn't about him failing. It was about me succeeding completely, indisputably, in ways that had nothing to do with him. That was the real revenge. Not making him suffer, but making his assessment of me so obviously wrong that everyone could see it. The waitress he'd dismissed had become a respected artist with museum acquisitions and international exhibitions. The woman he'd traded for strategic advantage had built more success than he'd ever achieved. And I'd done it with integrity, without betraying anyone, without using anyone, just through the quality of my work and the strength I'd found in being broken. 7 years after our breakup, I received an invitation to serve as a juror for a prestigious art prize. The letter mentioned that previous jurors had included artists I'd admired for years, people whose careers I'd studied and learned from. Being invited to join them was recognition that I'd achieved a level of success and respect that put me in that rare category of artists who actually make it. I sat in my studio, surrounded by new paintings I was creating, and thought about the girl who'd fallen in love with a pianist's hands, who'd believed in romance and partnership and building something together. She'd been naive in some ways, had trusted too easily, had given too much without protecting herself. But she'd also been right about some things. Art mattered. Creating beauty mattered. Love mattered, even when it ended badly. I'd become someone different through the pain of Ethan's betrayal. Harder, more careful, more focused on my own goals than on supporting someone else's dreams. That transformation had been necessary for survival, had allowed me to build the career I'd always wanted. But I'd also lost something in that hardening. The openness, the willingness to be vulnerable, the belief that love could be simple and pure and uncomplicated. Those parts of me had been casualties of heartbreak, sacrificed to become strong enough to succeed alone. Was it worth it? The success I'd achieved, the revenge I'd taken by simply exceeding every expectation Ethan had dismissed me with, had it been worth the cost of becoming someone less open, less trusting, less willing to believe in partnership? I didn't know. Probably never would. The question was too complicated, too tied up in pain and triumph and transformation to have a simple answer. What I did know was this: Ethan had tried to make me small, had reduced me to just a waitress when I was so much more. And I'd refused to accept that reduction. I'd fought back not with destruction or sabotage, but with pure achievement. I'd become undeniable, successful in ways that made his assessment of me laughably wrong. That was my revenge. Not hurting him, but proving him wrong. Not destroying his career, but building mine so successfully that the contrast was obvious. Not making him suffer, but making him watch me thrive without him, making him understand exactly what he'd given up when he traded love for strategy. 10 years after I first heard Ethan play Chopin in that hotel lobby, after I'd fallen in love with his hands and his music and his passion, I could finally say I'd moved completely beyond him. He was a story I told sometimes, a chapter that had ended badly but had taught me important things, a part of my history but not my present. The museum that had acquired my painting years earlier was mounting a retrospective of my work, a full career survey at age 33. It was extraordinary validation, the kind of exhibition most artists don't get until much later in their careers, if at all. The exhibition would show my evolution as an artist, from the early paintings created while listening to Ethan practice, through the breakthrough works made in the pain of betrayal, to the mature pieces that showed confidence and mastery. It would tell a story of transformation, of an artist finding her voice through adversity. The narrative was compelling even without knowing the biographical details, but the details made it more poignant. A girl who'd loved a pianist and supported his dreams while neglecting her own. A betrayal that nearly broke her. A decision to channel pain into creation. A career built through determination and refusal to be diminished. Success that exceeded anything she'd imagined in that tiny apartment in Queens. That was my story. That was my revenge. That was my victory. And it was enough. After 10 years of pain and work and transformation, it was finally enough.